Hello and welcome to the Manipur Roundtable. This is brought to you by Boom Live or Boom Fact Check as we are known sometimes. This is boomlive.in. We are fact checkers and we address misinformation. We're based in Mumbai and in Delhi, and we do our work out of India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. My name is HR Venkatesh, and I'm the Director of Training and Research here at Boom Live. I'm joined by the person who leads this entire initiative, which comes under the Northeast Facts Network, which is something we started last year, given our experience when we were unable to really verify information coming out of Manipur. And we realized we should take this opportunity also to acknowledge to ourselves that we don't understand, forget just Manipur, any of the northeastern states very well. And we want to correct that imbalance in our understanding and misapprehensions. And this is directly aimed at people outside Manipur and outside the 8 northeastern states. So the person who leads that is Dr. Sabina Yasmin Rahman. She's been in touch with you all. She's here. We also have our research assistant, Shulo Dua, who has also been in touch with you all. We're also joined by our fact checker, Divya Chandra, and our producer, Tita Ghosh. Yes, so we're coming at you at a time of political crisis and conflict in Manipur, a year after, or a little more than a year and a few months after violence erupted in the state. There are some things, therefore, that we will do today, and there are some things we will not do in the next 90 minutes or so. We are not here to grab headlines or make headlines. We are not here to be sensationalistic. We are not here really about the news today, which by definition, of course, is all about what is new and what is current. No, we are focused today on context, on background, and on understanding. We are not here to reduce any issues in the state to a binary, which regrettably there's a lot of tendency to do in the mainstream media. So we are not here to reduce issues to a binary. Rather, we want to see them as a full spectrum. Finally, we're here to listen to our panelists, our esteemed panel, really, and I'm honored to be having a conversation with them today. Hopefully, this conversation will help us all understand Manipur a little better. Let me quickly introduce our panelists one by one in the order in which they're speaking, and then I will do a detailed introduction as I come to each speaker. So we have 7 speakers today. We have Mr. Pausagin Tonsing, founder and director, Center for Community Initiative, and focuses on welfare for persons with disabilities. We have Sylvia Sagolsem, who is the assistant professor, Gitam School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Vishakhapatnam. She focuses on, in her work among other things, Meitei Manipuri folklore and digitalization. We have John Gangmei, who's the assistant professor of social work, Rajiv Gandhi University, Arunachal Pradesh, who focuses on traditional institutions and deathscapes of the Rongmei tribe. We have Kumar Davidson Singh, a queer activist and founder of Matai Society, who speak on queerness and Manipur. We have Deborah Darlian Mavi, Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology, University of Allahabad, focuses on, among other things, Kuki Chin Mizo women in Manipur and in the region. We also have Pusham Azad Babu, a PhD candidate at Jawaharlal University at CSSS, who speaks on the Pangals, the Muslims of Manipur. And then finally, we have Tingmina Horam, a PhD candidate at the Special Center for the Study of Northeast India at Jawaharlal Nehru University, who focuses on other things on textiles and Tangkul Nagas. So here's how the next 90 minutes will unfold. Each speaker will be invited to speak for 3 to 4 minutes, in which they will speak about their work and how their work intersects with the issues of Manipur. In the second round, I'm going to ask every speaker the same question, which is, what do we outside Manipur, what do we get wrong about Manipur? Where is the fault in our understanding? And finally, we'll have a Q&A. I also have a last request for all you people who are here. Thank you for joining us. This is a time of sensitivity, and please do not ask any questions that will threaten the welfare and safety of our guests. So with that said, I'm going to start off and invite the very first speaker, who is an advocate for persons of disabilities, Pausagin Tonsing. He combines a strong academic record in physics from Assam University and a postgraduate diploma in journalism and mass communications from IIMC Dhenkanal, Orissa. He has over 15 years experience, inspired really by personal experiences as the father of a child with irreversible optic nerve atrophy. He, along with other parents, restructured the Center for Community Initiatives in 2007, focusing on welfare for persons with disabilities. In 2011, CCI launched the Malson Initiative in Churachandpur. Mr. Tonsing actively participates in various district level committees dedicated to welfare and the education, and a member he is of the State Advisory Board Disability. So he's also been awarded many times. He's been awarded the Amazing Indians Award in Education by Times Now in the past as well. Pause again. It's over to you. Speak for 3 to 4 minutes and then I'll go to the next speaker.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
Hi.
As Venkatas introduced me, that is my full story. And I'll add to that, Center for Community Initiative, CCI, which is based in Churachandpur, Manipur, which is bordering with Myanmar and Mizoram. At the beginning, we never dreamed that we'll be at this stage, but with the growth, the organization growing day by day. Now, CCI has focused 4 thematic areas. The first is on disability. Then another one is advocacy and community empowerment. Another area is on sustainable development or livelihood and disaster management. So I'll focus more on disability. And disability, right now we have a center base, which we call it Damalsom Initiative, a school for children with disabilities, and it's across disability. Most of the school all over India are with specific disabilities, but here we have a cross disability. We have a visually impaired, a hearing impaired, autistic kids, then cerebral palsy, intellectual disabilities. So they are sitting together in one classroom, and we set the curriculum for that. Another area is on early intervention, where we provide services to from baby till 10 years, 0 to 10 years. This is like a school preparedness. And we have a therapeutic services and community outreach program and a home-based care program. And another strong area, as Venkatas mentioned, is on our advocacy. Right now, since we are working best out of Churachandpur, we also work along with other state platform for persons with disabilities in the state level. And in the hill area also, last 2 years, we started establish one Manipur Hill District Dispute Union, because the welfare for person with disability is most neglected area in the sector, in the development sectors. Not only in Manipur, even all over India, it's almost the same. But other part of India is better well off as compared to Manipur. So till that, we in a year around 200 students we are providing services as per their requirement. And with adult, we are working on the welfare schemes, the schemes from the government side or from other area, like providing the ads and planches or other livelihood programs and all. So this would be a very few introduction I have, and
Right.
over to Venkatesh.
Thank you so much. We'll come back to you and then we'll learn more about your work and also your perspective. Thank you for joining us. Let's bring in our next speaker. Dr. Sylvia Segolsem is an assistant professor at the Gitan School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Visakhapatnam. She is a former research fellow at the Center for Advanced Internet Studies in Germany and holds a PhD from the Center for English Studies at the School of Language, Literature and Cultural Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Her research interests include and lie really at the intersection of folklore and digital cultures. Sylvia, it's over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Venkatesh. First of all, a very good afternoon to all. I am Dr. Sylvia Segolsem, and as has been introduced, I am currently working as an assistant professor at the Gitan School of Humanities and Social Sciences in the Vizag campus. I hold a PhD from the Center for English Studies from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. And prior to joining GITAM, I was a research fellow at the Center for Advanced Internet Studies, also known as CAIS in short form, which is based in Germany. And there I conducted my research project, which is titled Pungawari Goes Digital, Emergent Online Materialities and Shifting Paradigms of Meitei Folklore, which is what my discussion and my talk today is going to be primarily based on this project. I am very excited and honored to be invited to this discussion today, and I look forward to engaging in what I'm sure will be a thought-provoking conversation with my panelists. Thank you so much for having me here today. I believe I have roughly 3 to 4 minutes to introduce my work and my area of expertise. I'll try to keep it within the time limit. So as for my area of research, I would like to draw on my research project that I recently conducted at CAIS and the title which I've just introduced, which is based on digitalization of Meitei Manipuri folklore. Primarily located on digital platforms such as YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. So my project examines the traditional folk narratives of the indigenous Meitei Manipuri community, which is called the Pungawari, that is currently evolving as user-generated content on digital platforms such as YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, primarily led by indigenous players. So the digital materialities of Pungawari, they are in varied forms, ranging from animation to digital illustrations, graphic comics, etc. So these are visual texts in nature, and some of them are images, some of them are animation, and all of them are accompanied by sort of some kind of meta text in some form or the other. So these are the texts that I have located on digital platforms that I have looked at stemming from the Meitei Manipuri community, folklore of that particular community. So my research conceptualizes digital materialities of Pungawari as an innovative form of cultural identity expression that also incidentally renders a form of digital cultural archive of such folk traditions, and also engenders a new mode of digital storytelling of traditional oral traditions. So in other words, my research examines the interplay between Meitei Manipuri folklore, local creative industries, and digital platforms. And this convergence or the coming together of these three elements, this represents an evolving subculture that underscores the agency of platform users who are also amateur producers of this subculture and who are also prosumers engaged in the formation of this subculture, and which is facilitated by the affordances of participatory media platforms. So in essence, my research also conceptualizes digital media platforms as hosts of cultural identity expressions, as well as the side of ethnography and folklore scholarship. So I want to emphasize on the importance of oral traditions within the larger framework of intangible cultural heritage, particularly with regard to indigenous communities of Manipur, of which Meitei community is a part of. So our traditional stories and our folktales and other forms of oral traditions, they are interactional strategies through which cultural identity is discursively produced. And as culturally embedded folk narrative forms, they represent creative and artistic expressions of that said community. And and by extension, the folktales, they become a fundamental component of our cultural heritage. And I emphasize on the word cultural heritage because I want to link it with the UNESCO Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage, 2006, which clarifies on certain areas and subjects, wherein this concept of ICH is aptly applied to oral traditions and expressions. Therefore, folk narrative forms such as the Pungawari are actually an inherent part of the ICH, and they relate to the very pertinent task of cultural preservation. And it is within this very context that the ongoing convergence of Meitei Manipuri folklore with digital media platforms, they present certain possibilities embodying adaptation, negotiations, and appropriation of digital technology. And this interplay of oral traditions with new media technology not only gives form and shape, to new digital forms of folklore, but also presents possibilities and new meanings that gives renewed sort of relevance and cultural revitalization to oral traditions and folk heritage in a digital context. So, this is briefly about the project and the larger representation of what my work really entails. If I have some more time, I would very briefly want to talk about.
Can we come back to you, Dr. Sagolsan? Because
sure.
we're out of time and we have 7 speakers.
Sure.
So that's the thing.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be like one of those crazy TV panel
I
discussions.
understand. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
No problem.
Thank you so much. So we'll hear definitely from Dr. Sagolsan soon. Let's bring in our next speaker, Dr. John Gangme, is an assistant professor at the Department of Social Work, Rajiv Gandhi University, Rono Hills, Doimuk. He graduated from NN College of Social Work and finished his MSW, his MPhil and PhD from TIS, Mumbai. His research interests are tribal institutions, customary laws, rural-urban communities, and livelihoods. He currently serves as the PhD course coordinator and an executive member of the RGU Teachers Association. It's over to you, John.
Thank you, Venkatesh. On this onset, I would like to acknowledge the effort of the BOOM's Northeast Fact Network for this opportunity given to me and to other co-panelists and to all the other participants who are present here. At the onset, I would also like to acknowledge the traditional institutions, those villages, elders, and my friends and those people who have assisted me in my fieldwork on this particular studies or in my career. I am here to present about the relation between the traditional institutions and the deathscape, particularly the indigenous believer, or they also call themselves as the Tinkau Ragon Chabrek, that is the TRC groups, in the Imphal areas, that is the urban areas. The question is that what have aroused me to study is that in my childhood day or school days, we used to hear about the struggles, and as we grew up, there were more challenges because we have a practice of courtyard burial. So with the rapid socio-economics and urbanizations and growth of population, this space was shrinking, and therefore these traditional institutions were faced with challenge that where they should dispose the dead or bury the dead. And there is another criteria, a group of people which are landless, group of people in Imphal that are from the dead itself. So this is about the struggles of the people or the voice of that, how these groups of people on traditional institution, they came forward and look out for the solutions. They have attempted and approached the government for this. However, it was not solved at all. So the traditional institution came up with the looking for the burial space in the rural area, and that was also not successful. And at last, this TRC group and village institution, they have appealed the government to provide land, though they have given, but there was some kind of contestation and disagreement with a third party. Therefore, they could not. And there has been an incident, unfortunately, that some of the landless believers, indigenous believers, have to convert to the other religion, particularly the Christian. Why? The reason is that because we have a Christian cemetery, and in Imphal we have another 2 Commonwealth War cemetery. So this was a kind of negotiation and challenges they have. And this traditional institution, they served, and later on, with a lot of struggles, 2-3 decades, they were able to find this burial space in the outskirts of Imphal, and they begin to network with others villages and form a what we call the community burial committee. So which is an uncommon practices, and I myself have seen in the Imphal area where they have disposed the dead on the riverbank and even in the drainage in the heart of the Imphal city. And I have been and interacted, and even in the veranda, for a temporary, they have to dismantle the veranda, and they have to bury that, and they have to again make that veranda as a den. And these are the kind of challenges which they have undergone. And one important to note is that the dead rituals or burial is not an individual obligation, but an obligation of the traditional institution and the village. It is a moral as well as the obligation of the villagers that to take care of such kind of practices. So this is about the struggle which I have done, conducted my studies. Okay, thank you. I will further elaborate if needed in the further discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Let's bring in Kumar Davidson, who's a queer activist, writer, educator, researcher from Manipur. His works extend across LGBTQIA advocacy, indigenous livelihood, psychosocial health, social research, leadership, mentorship, and intersect with armed conflict trauma, gender, sexuality, class, and ethnicity. It's over to you, Kumar. I forgot to add that he's the founder of the Matai Society and co-founder of the Chinky Homo Project. Kumar, it's over to you.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Venkatech. Thank you, team Boom Live, for having me here. Nice to meet you, all the panelists and people who have come here. Why am I talking about queerness when Manipur is literally in the middle of an unending armed conflict that has lasted more than a year? My answer is that queerness is, yes, by definition, a political stance, a political statement, discourse, which defies normative, heteronormative binary male-female, male-female, and discrimination based on gender and sexuality. Yes, I mean, that's a very, very, very simple understanding of it. But queerness over the years, queerness over the year have also evolved to be a larger political discourse, which acknowledges systematic discrimination based not just on gender and sexuality, but also on class, ethnicity, religion, economic differences. So therefore, for me, queerness is not just about gender and sexuality. Queerness is a larger political discourse which is anti-authoritarian, anti-majoritarian. It seeks for accountability in governance, in political leadership. And I think that is one reason why I'm choosing to talk about queerness in today's roundtable. Number two, queerness as a lived reality, as a political discourse, as a fight for rights, as a movement from Manipur, not just from Manipur, elsewhere across Northeast India or in the country or in South Asia, remain to be very, very underrepresented, invisibilized, misunderstood. And I think that's also precisely my second reason why queerness is important to talk about in the middle of an armed conflict, because in an armed conflict, discrimination based on queerness increases manifold, while in be it media reporting, be it public conversation, decreases manifold. It is, in fact, one of the least talked about conversation, one of the least addressed social community issue. And I think despite the fact that I continue to do a lot of humanitarian work, peace building work, rebuilding work at Matai Society, conflict response work, but I think queerness as such sort of continue to be a very pivotal position for me to even talk about Manipur. For me, I want to look at Manipur from a lens of queerness. Right. So queerness in general stem from a resistance against discrimination on the basis of gender sexuality, yes, and started in the late 80s in mostly Western countries, but also today it's a global movement. And in that global movement, Manipur definitely enjoys its own history. Manipur definitely has contributed its own discourse to it, especially in the early 2000s. Our queer trans records and archives suggest that there has been a visible amount of queer activism voices from the early 80s, which is typically as a resistance against the systematic violence from the state, from civil society, from public, from one's own families, right? So, and I think for more than 20 years, for almost about 25 years, we have been resisting. We have been resisting. A lot of people before, a lot of people in my time, and also today in our younger generation, there has been a very, very aggressive resistance against queer trans discrimination. With armed conflict, it tends to get more complex, which is where we are exactly right now. And I think there is a lot more to talk about, and probably 4 minutes is not enough to unpack this complexity. But I think I would like to sum up in 30 seconds on then what does this resistance look like? How do we build that resistance model? So in my work, I employ a very, very intersectional, very collaborative community building through especially storytelling, storytelling and archiving, which is precisely what we do at the Chinkyomo project. We do a lot of psychosocial health intervention and support work, especially for minorities. We also do livelihood intervention as another way of empowering the community. We do creative and research work, a lot of research and archiving work, because our history needs to be written, it's not written. And grassroots community building is a very, very pivotal, strong part of it. And mobilization and advocacy at local institutional level. I like to sum up here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kumar. I just want to point out we've covered about 29 minutes or 25 minutes since we began. I ask you all to do your introductions within the 3 to 4 minutes time limit, so that we can bring in everyone and we can have a full 1 hour to talk after that. But yes, it is interesting to note so far we've had a wide section of leaders and scholars speak about their intersections with Manipur. Let's bring in Dr. Deborah Dalian Mavi now, belonging to the Khmer community of Manipur. Her PhD thesis focuses on women's organizations among the Kuki Chin Mizo women of Manipur. Her research interests cover tribal studies, ethnicity, sociological theory, and the women's movement. She's presently working as an assistant professor of sociology at the University of Allahabad. Deborah, it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Venkatesh sir. Good afternoon to the Boom team, my fellow panelists, and everyone listening to this session. Thank you once again for having me on this Manipur Roundtable. I know that I will learn a lot from this session. So in order to set my stand as a researcher, as a social researcher, I just want to bring in a little bit of where I grew up and how my education was, right? I am from Khmer community in Churchandpur, grew up in Imphal and Aizawl, higher education in Shillong, and then PhD from IIT Kanpur, Uttar Pradesh, and now working in University of Allahabad in Uttar Pradesh. So with all these, and also before working in Allahabad University, I had some research project in Guwahati and Dimapur as well, and taught a little bit in Dimapur. So with all this background, where I grew up and where I did my education, so I think it really gave me a strong root as a social researcher, as I had mentioned, to be an insider and outsider as well when I went and did my PhD data collection in Churchandpur during my PhD period. Yes, so as Sir Venkatesh mentioned, my PhD work focuses on women's organizations and social problems in Manipur, where I focus on 3 main organizations that are functioning in Churchandpur, namely Khmer Women Association, Zomi Mothers Association, and Kuki Women's Union. So these organizations mainly came about in the late 1980s and 90s. And since then, they have been working effortlessly to cater to the needs of women in their respective ethnic groups. So from the name itself, we are able to understand that these women's organizations are divided, or they are functioning within their own ethnic lines. And definitely when I went for interview and when I collected data, like some very, very small instances of where they would go and go beyond their ethnic lines were there, but mostly it's a very local form of functioning that they have. And also, when we look at this type of women's organizations, they broadly come under what we call ethnic organizations also. So if we look at other women's organizations centering around ethnic lines in various countries around the world, we could see that definitely they are within they are set up within this within their own ethnicity. So as far as tribal societies are concerned, so the customary laws definitely has certain kind of limitations, right? As we look at women's rights and so on. So the one question which was also asked to me during my viva, and also when I talk about the role that are played by these three women's organizations, and so they often ask me is that, okay, so their issues are not really focusing on the feminist issues that we talk about, right? So so at large, what my conclusion and what my stand in this regard is that definitely the roles that are played by these three women's organizations in these communities are very, very influential and beneficial, because they are really, making the presence of women in the public space as well. So, and also when we look at the evolution of issues that women undertake around the world. So in the beginning, the issue could be if we can say, if we try to look at through this feminist perspective, right, and we can say that, okay, these are very much inclined towards the these are very much within the patriarchal system of tackling issues. But eventually, when we look at the evolution of women issues around the world, some women's organization also started within this own patriarchal setting, but eventually, and also later, as the issues get evolved, so eventually the issues gets changed, and also it streamlined towards the feminist issues as well. So definitely the issues that they are undertaking are very much instrumental and bringing lots of contribution to the tribal women in whole, as far as the state of Manipur is concerned. Yeah. With this, I would like to end my introduction on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Deborah. Let's bring in Dr. Pusham Azad Babu, who recently completed his PhD at the Center for the Study of Social Systems, JNU. Congratulations on that. He specializes on the sociology of violence. His areas of interest include political sociology, sociology of religion and research methodology. He also acted as the former VP and advisor of the Delhi Association of Manipur Muslim Students. It's over to you, Pusham.
Yeah, good afternoon. Is it audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank this for and Home Network for having me here to have a talk on Panelist of Manipur. As explained by Venkatesh, I have completed my PhD from Center for the Study of Social Systems, Jawaharlal Nehru University, and I have just awarded my degree. My area of research was on collective violence and forging of community boundaries, and a study about the relationship between the panels and natives of Manipur. And it was basically about post-conflict, post-violence situation when there was a major violence happening. And about my area of interest, it's research methodology, sociology of violence, and religious sociology. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the misconceptions about the panels, which are held by many who do not have much idea about that the panels who are the ethnic Muslims of Manipur really do exist in Manipur. So that I would just like to say a little bit about the origin of the panels, how they have internalized the whole traditional systems, how they have immigrated, how the Muslims have immigrated from outside, and how they have set up a community in Manipur, and the existing conditions about the panels with relationship to other communities in this cloud of conflicts, violence, and political assertions in Manipur. So let me elaborate in my next. That's my introduction. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's hope we get to your areas of specialization, every single one of you. We have spent a few minutes talking about it. In the next section, we'll talk about what we get wrong. That is after the last speaker. But I also want to sort of communicate that they may not be an option, or there may not be a chance to talk specifically about your work and make it sort of larger in the larger scheme and how it fits into Manipur. So that is the note I would like to sound. Let's bring in our next speaker, Dr. Thingmenao Forum, recently completed her PhD at the Special Center for the Study of Northeast India, JNU. Congratulations again, where she also earned an MPhil in 2018. Her research focuses on the textile practices of the Tangkhul Nagas, with a particular emphasis on the invisibilized gendered labor of weaving. Through her work, she highlights the traditional role of weaving among Tangkhul women and explores why they continue to engage in this practice. She critically examines textiles as a narrative form and exploring how Tangkhul women use textiles as to articulate the subjectivities and express societal ideologies. A broader research interests encompass textile traditions, visual anthropology, and the cultural histories of Northeast India and its connections to Southeast Asia. A recent publication includes the chapter Weaving, Resistance and Identity, Politics of Contemporary Textile Practice of the Tangkhuls, in the publication Materiality and Visuality in Northeast India, an interdisciplinary perspective. It's over to you, Dr. Thingmenao.
Thank you. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Yes. Hello, all. It is a great honor to be part of this roundtable organized by Boom Life, Northeast Facts Network. I feel fortunate to be among such esteemed panelists, each representing their important work and expertise. My academic interest in textiles is rooted in a deep personal and familial connection with the weaving community. My mother, my grandmother, and the women before them were all skilled weavers. And growing up in the western part of the Tangkhul region in Manipur, where backstrap weaving is a highly regarded skill, I was surrounded by exceptional weavers. The women around me always viewed higher education as a means to escape the laborious weaving profession. Ironically, however, I now find myself drawn back to these very practices, researching, documenting, and writing about the textile traditions of my community. Enrolling in an MPhil PhD integrated program at the Special Center for the Study of Northeast India, Jawaharlal Nehru University, I naturally gravitated towards exploring the textile practices that had shaped my childhood and influenced my understanding of indigenous cultural practices. Yet, when I began my research, I was struck by the absence of academic studies on Tangkhul textiles or textile traditions of Manipur in general. There was not a single comprehensive research paper or thesis that I could use as a foundation. This realization turned into a driving force for me, and I wanted to create a body of knowledge that could serve as a foundational resource for understanding textile tradition of the Tangkhuls. This gap in scholarship made me aware of the broader underrepresentation of textile traditions from the peripheral regions of India in the larger discourse on Indian textile studies. If mentioned at all, they are often viewed through an Orientalist lens, which overlooks the complex networks and exchanges that have shaped these traditions. My research thus became an effort to bridge this gap, demonstrating how the study of textile traditions from Northeast India can offer unique insights into indigenous practices, cultural politics, spatial relations, and trade networks, perspectives that are often absent from mainstream textile scholarship. Now, having completed my doctoral research, I am committed, and in the future, I want to make my work, my PhD work, more accessible. I want future textile researchers to have better access to resources related to the Tangkhuls and their textile making practices. And after navigating the arduous process of fieldwork, translating oral histories, and analyzing ethnographic data, I recognize that there is a need to organize and present this knowledge beyond academic dissertations. So my aim is to document and preserve these indigenous practices, making them visible and accessible not only to academic audiences, but also to the broader public. I see it as my responsibility to continue researching and representing these practices and to inspire future researchers to explore indigenous traditions that are at risk of being overlooked or forgotten. With this, I end my introduction. Later on, I will, if given the opportunity, I will dive more into the specificities of my research work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So with that, we've ended the first phase of this discussion. We have another 50 minutes or so. And now, of course, we're all friends. So I've already taken the liberty to drop the doctors and Misters and Mrs. So please, I request you all to do the same with me. And a note to our guests here who are here listening to all the speakers. We will have a Q&A section, but please keep in mind that be mindful of the sensitivities of the ongoing conflict. Be mindful of how these questions might, work when it comes to answering them for our panelists. We'll now get into this section we call What We Get Wrong About Manipur. I encourage all the speakers again to speak. You can speak about what we get wrong about the current conflict, or you can speak about what we get wrong about the work and your lived experience of being a Manipuri. You can choose. There is no compulsion to speak about one or the other. You can speak about one or the other or both. So if that sounds good, let's try and get through this section quicker than we did the last section, so that there'll be questions and answers questions and Q&A towards the end. And that will be a moment where we can probably all speak about our specialities and our work a little bit more. So let me invite again, let me mix up the order, but it's been a while since Pozigan has spoken. So we'll start with Pozigan. So Pozigan, and then Kumam, and then Sylvia. In that order, what do we get wrong about Manipur?
Yeah, I don't want to go to another topic, but I would like to concentrate on disability itself, about Manipur.
Right.
The percentage of person with disability is a bit high as compared to other part of India, but the reality in data it's the same, but in reality it will be more old, because the urban area of Manipur is a few as compared to the rural in Manipur. And making of the data, when it comes to data during census, also the enumerators, they are not expert on disabilities. They did not include many of the person with disability in the census. And especially coming to the hills, that is more as compared to the valley. Then even in terms of education, the education department, the UDI's data is one, but the reality is completely different again. So disability, in the meantime, it's stigmatization, and most of the people who are collecting the data, they base with the visible disabilities only. And there are many neglected area, which is like invisible disability, learning disability, or intellectual disabilities, and many areas are neglected, and the data itself is wrong. So based on these data, the central government or from the mainland India, they make a scheme or a program for the Northeast, not only for Manipur, for the Northeast. So when they make it in the Northeast program for person with disability, so the share they have to get is very less as compared to other part. So correcting data is one thing which is very necessary, so that any scheme or any program or any development scheme for the welfare of person with disability will come like in at least, if not fulfilling all what they need, but at least to at some level. So getting data is a very crucial point right now. And in the Northeast, when people look from the mainland India, when they thought that the village means like 500, 600 household, but coming to the Northeast, the village is like 150 household. So persons with disability who are living in that remote, unreached area are more neglected. So the scheme, whatever the scheme the government had made are to be based in metro area or in the state capital in the Northeast India. And till that, the schemes are also concentrated in the town area, say in some like 3 or 4 area in Manipur, in the Imphal area, in Meghalaya, in Shillong area, or Tura area. So neglected part is very crucial in this area because of the community that the tribal this stigmatization in the tribal community stigmatization of person with disability in the
Right.
tribal community itself is challenged. And I would like to include many areas. And coming to education part, this is a very challenging area again. So the government has many,
Fauzigan, I
I mean,
request you, Fauzigan, I request you to be
yeah,
a little mindful of the time
yeah,
and
okay.
do finish off
So
as
I'll try,
quickly as you can.
okay, I'll try to conclude it. And in education, under Right for Person with Disability Act and Right RTE, person with disability, children with disability has to be included in mainstream school. But till that, the inclusion is very less. 25% of reservation under RTE for underprivileged is included in for this PWD, but still neglected. And most of the schools don't have a special educator or a scheme, I mean, for inclusion of person with disability in the schools. So these are the area where people who are in power has to look into it. And another area of deficit in the notice is on training for professional training on disability or professional training center in the notice. So I'll
Right.
conclude here. Thank you. Try to make it very
Thank you,
fast.
Fauzigan. Yeah, it's never enough time. That's the problem with these,
Yeah. Thank you.
this kind of, with this format. But it's the least worst, is what I would say. I would not want to do something that's half an hour long, but in 90 minutes, maybe we'll have a little more time. So let's go to Kumam and then Sylvia. What do we get wrong about Manipur?
So what we get wrong about Manipur, especially right now, is that there is this comparison to Kashmir as a conflict state, and I think Manipur and Kashmir are very, very different in terms of how the conflict has played out and what are the factors. So that's very different. Number one. Number two, Manipur is an Indian state. It's not in China. Um, and it's an Indian state, one of the Indian states, through a statehood that was granted, that was given in 1972 by the government of India, albeit resistance separatist movements throughout armed conflict, APSPA, and many more. So that's Manipur, which we usually don't get it right. And Manipur again is not a typically hill valley Christian Hindu state. It is very, very diverse. There are diverse racial, linguistic, ethnic groups in the state, including the Marwaris. Number three, therefore, what we get also wrong about Manipur is that queerness as such, we cannot look at from a lens of, like very North Indian, mainstream Hindu lens. It is much more indigenous, it's much more local. And the queerness or queer reality as such differs from which community you belong to, which area you belong to. Are you Muslim? Are you Kuki? Are you Naga, Tangkhul, Meitei? So it's very, very different. So there is a lot of diversity which gets really, really misinformed. Usually, that's my take. Thanks.
Thank you, Kumam. It's over to Sylvia.
Right. So to address the larger question of what mainland gets wrong about Manipur, I would like to approach that as an academic and a researcher through the lens of my own work and look at how cultural heritage may be a possible way to address that, how folklore can be an instrument for self-representation and reimagination of our selfhood and our identity, so to speak, to add nuance to our identity beyond the stock characteristics that have been ascribed to the people of Manipur as well as the larger region for that matter. So, in the dominant discourse, one thing that I've observed over the years, throughout my career, is that there is this dominant discourse and a very popular imagination regarding Manipur, and of course, which extends to the larger Northeast as well, is that it is informed by interpolated binaries, of violence or the exotic, so either it's this troubled periphery where there's nothing but violence and people are products of that violence, or either we are exoticized or infantilized, and exoticization may be being reduced to, say, certain products and cultural artifacts. So Northeast meaning bamboo shoot, the land of food and culture and some cultural products. So being commodified, being reduced to such kind of reductive logic being applied to us. So I think these are the stereotypes that we have been perennially suffering from, which again, as I said, it's this very, very reductive binaries that through which we have been framed. And I think nuance is the need of the hour, and we can do that from so many different backgrounds and perspectives, and which is where I think my approach through cultural heritage, cultural revitalization, and using this as a cultural instrument and a tool to reimagine and represent ourselves in the mainland, in the mainstream, is very much a need of the hour. And in the case of my own work, I critically sort of engage with Indian folklore scholarship from the idea of what is missing, in the post-colonial context. So when we say Indian folklore or Indian folklore scholarship, there is a very limited idea of what that means, and then there's absences and marginalizations still very strongly felt. Personally, I've seen that, and even in collections that we deem representative of Indian folklore or folk tales, you see that there's just this kind of very insulting tokenism going on, which shows the lack of interest or the lack of motivation or the lack of knowledge thereof. So I think my work endeavors to sort of address that a little bit by bringing forth nuance and criticality in engaging with Indian folklore studies and highlighting the importance of the cultural heritage of the Northeast and Manipur specifically, by looking at the folklore of my community in particular. So I think that would be my response to that question. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. Let's bring in two other speakers before I call upon the others. And also, this is a reminder for people to start writing in their questions in the box, in the chat box, and we will take them. And there is no such thing as a bad question. There is no such thing as a stupid question. Sometimes really basic questions help everyone understand a lot as well. So on that note, let's bring in John Gangmei, and then after John, let's go to Deborah on what we get wrong about Manipur.
Yeah, thank you once again. I would like to bring forth the perspective or the lived experience which I have come across when I went out to study. That is my further studies in the metropolitan, that is Mumbai, where many of the things that I have learned about the traditional institution, the customary laws, are not even not in the state or in the curriculums or in the higher education. It is out of curiosity that the questioning that have helped me to retrospect and then to dig it out, that what is it, why the significance of this institution in this modern time, and how these institutions are functioning. So these things are missing. And when I talk about this in my studies also, I have talked about the adaptive governance, where we say that when we say the traditional institution, the image is that about the ideas of those time frame, which is rigid. No, these institutions have undergone a lot of changes, and I have always advocate for the transformation, that it need to undergo transformation and changes, and it is inevitable that it must undergo. At the same time, this has to be accepted, and this kind of institution, how well this has been ingrained in them, and this has to be learned, that other part of the India also need to understand what does the significance of these institutions and the meaning of the institution to the people. The cultural sensitivity is missing. That is where I find in my studies or in my experience out there. And kind of when I begin to ask, so I remember in my undergraduate that I asked about, which I didn't even know that why we have different type of provisions, why we have this kind of institution which is not recognized by the state. I'm talking about the Imphal, but they are quite significant to the peoples and in the life of the people out there. So this kind of question was I could not get, and that is the curiosity that brought me to this day, that why and how and what are these? These are the questions that 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 make me to look into this effort, and I'm looking forward further that such kind of transitions need to be taken care in the other part of the part of the country also. There has been an effort. We look forward, but more has to be integrated and converse so that we have larger pictures of the regions or the state or the people. As some of the panelists have said, we are diverse, we are complex. There are diversity out there, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Deborah, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much for this time again. I would just like to state three things what the mainland gets wrong about Manipur from my own experiences. The first one would be when we talk about the tribals, right? So during my PhD time, we had my junior, we were discussing about just the tribal society, and also when he was asked, when discussion was there, so he just mainly said, okay, what do you have picture in your mind when we talk about the tribals? So he said, some people, without proper clothes, living in the jungles. So that was when I think, as a overall, the concept that most of the people, like in the mainland, living in India, what the picture of tribal people means. Secondly, when I went for a conference, and also before I present my paper, often the coordinator would introduce women in Northeast as empowered. Women in northeastern part of the India are so empowered. So just because they're especially women in Northeast is a very big. It encompasses many women from different backgrounds, socio-cultural background, but when we focus specifically on the tribal women, just because in the social structure of the tribal society, no presence of dowry, no female feticide, no restriction on widow remarriage and all. It doesn't necessarily give them necessarily give us a concluding remark that women in Northeast are empowered, right? When we look at the matrilineal society, like the Khasi society in Meghalaya, also there are so many other facets that can be analyzed. Yeah. So the third one would be, I would say that based in the what I have mentioned in the introductory part, that Manipur women they are not a homogeneous entity. So this is the very reason why I also undertook my research, that when we look at women in Manipur, right, when it comes to academic literatures and all, we mostly see the contribution of Meera Paibis. And whenever I say women in Manipur, and even when I started talking about it as at the beginning of my PhD proposal also. So the name that comes up by Meera Paibis and Irom Sharmila, right? But as in continuation to whatever has been said earlier, Manipur is much more diverse than that. And that's the very reason why I also wanted to bring in the other group of women that are present there, especially the Mar, Zomi, and Kuki women in Churchandpur. Yeah, that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Let's bring in our last set of speakers on this particular topic before we get into Q&A. Let's go to Thingme now, and then Pusham, and Pusham Azad, and then we'll see. So Thingme now first, then Azad next on what we get wrong about Manipur.
Thank you. I would like to respond to this question with regard to my research work. One key misconception is the portrayal of cultural practices, including textile practices, as static and trapped in time, often linking to notions of tradition and primitivism. In reality, these practices are deeply embedded in culture, capital, space, and labor, and evolving alongside contemporary social and economic conditions. So the dominant narrative that exists right now tends to view Northeast India's crafts through an outdated Orientalist and developmentalist lens, emphasizing a primordial and a pre-industrialist identity. This is a narrow focus on folk and tribal representations and overlooks the dynamic capitalistic engagements of artisans who actively shape and sustain thriving craft industries today. Yes, this is point number one that I had. Number two is another prevalent misconception is the portrayal of tribal communities, including the Nagas, as inherently egalitarian. This point was also addressed in the Nagaland Roundtable as well, and I think Deborah also highlighted this aspect. This narrative has persisted, largely ignoring the gender dimensions of labor, particularly the work of women. So, while researching textile making practices in among the Tangkhus, this point was important to address. Women's labor is often dismissed as mere handicraft, leading to its invisibilization within broader discourses on work and economy. This is largely because of colonial and anthropological representations that describe tribal societies as egalitarian in their writings, failing to recognize the complexity of gender roles and the significant contributions of women within these communities. So that is point number two. Point number three, lastly, another misconception that I wanted to point out relates to the contemporary realities of object making and cultural practices in Manipur and Northeast in general. Cultural practices or material practices are shaped by the interplay of space, place, and capital. Particularly within the context of Manipur being within the context of Indo-Myanmar borderland. So this borderland has been historically influenced by colonial frontier politics and state making, and this region has been long marked by vibrant exchanges of knowledge, labor, and materials across ethnic and national boundaries. For example, the introduction of the Burmese loom to Ukhrul district in the late 1990s, facilitated by cross-border exchanges of labor and ideas, reshaped textile production and gendered labor dynamics of the Tangkhus, contemporary textile production. So the involvement of traders and expert weavers from across Manipur and Myanmar especially has further transformed the Tangkhul textile industry, revealing the interconnected nature of local economies and cultural practices. So I wanted to stress this mobility of people and ideas and materials challenges the common perception of Northeast communities as like isolated from each other, insular, or too unique to have similarities relating to each other, etc. So instead, the reality instead reflects a long-standing history of inter-ethnic and transnational influences, reinforcing the need to view the region's cultural practices as dynamic and continuously evolving. It is crucial to recognize the region's interconnected histories and the role of mobility of people, ideas, knowledge in shaping its cultural and social identities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last, Pushram Azad, what do we get wrong about Manipur?
As I said earlier, I will talk about the Pangals of Manipur, who are the Muslims, and how people do not have proper understanding about the Muslims in Manipur. So the first thing that I would like to say is the Bangals, which I said they are the ethnic Muslims of Manipur, are particularly looked synonymously as they are considered to be similar with the rest of the Muslims from outside Manipur. This is one particular problem that has contributed to many of the ethnic violence that has happened in Manipur between communities. This is what I want to say. So emphasizing on the history of what went wrong in the last 400 or more years of coexistence between different communities, particularly with the Bangals. It's like the immigration, then phases of um, immigration, assimilation, integration into the land, formation of community, and after this, almost more than 400 years of existence. Somehow during the late 70s and 80s, after the Assam movement, there was this wave of go back foreigners movement in Assam, and that had swept into Manipur, and uh, the Bangals were looked synonymously with as they are foreigners. So that's how the misconception about the Bangals as an ethnic Muslim community of Manipur uh, uh, became. Uh, it was quite what to say there in Manipur during that time. I mean, people get to know that way. And the other thing is like it's not just about Manipur, but from outside. A lot of people do not know what happened in Manipur, whether there was a violence happening in the May days, and what was the reason. These are, I mean, kept. Most of the people do not know because many of the uh, people from outside do not have the proper, what to say, link or sources because very least research had been done in this area, and it was like a complete blackout of information in terms of research, in terms of trying to find out
Right.
the issues about this issue. So what I want to say is if we look at history, if we learn from history about the coexistence between the Bangals and the Meiteis, we can, if we know each other, if we learn about each other, if the knowledge production about the coexistence, about peaceful coexistence, about multiculturalism, about what to say, um, yeah, peaceful coexistence is propagated in the state, then I feel that this kind of problem between different communities, uh, which is there in Manipur right now, that see at this moment can be reduced. And the other thing is like in terms of misconception about the panels, as I've said, the first one is looking panels as if they are synonymous with the Muslims from outside. The Mapangas are very different. They have their sagas which were given by the king during that time in 1606, which is like a lot of historical sources which says that Pangas came before 1606. But then 1606 was the time when this community was formed and saga was given. People from the outside, the Muslims from outside were given land, local ladies, and that's how the community was formed. And the other thing is the religious. One particular thing I would like to mention is this concept of Ningol Mazhab, which is like the Pangals have come from outside, Muslims come from outside, and they are the progenies of just Muslims from outside and the local ladies. They are the progenies of this. I mean, a combination. But there are historical sources which says that after the introduction of Hinduism in Manipur during the early 18th century, when religious persecution had started in Manipur, many people from the Meitei community had converted to Islam in order to in order to evade this religious persecution. People who had not converted to Hinduism, so in order to evade those social sanctions which were given by the king, they had converted to Islam because Islam was protected, highly protected, and patronized community during that time. So the concept of Niwal Masa, which is like, I don't know what to say in the right English term, but then the progeny of the Niwals means the ladies of money. That is not exactly what the Pangals are right now. A lot many Pangals are actually the progenies of the Meiteis, who are male Meiteis, as well as whole the Meitei families had converted. So because of this cloud of misunderstanding that Pangals have come from outside, I think when if this is clear, then not many issues which are faced by the Pangals right now can be evaded, and I mean that's how I think things can be changed in Manipur. Better things can come. That's what I would like to see.
Thank you so much, Azad, on that note. Just want to do a quick time check. We have about 18 to 20 minutes. I mean, some of us can stay for a little longer, I suppose, but that's the official end. Let's bring in a Q&A at this point in time. Let's try to get a word in from every panelist as well, if possible. I think Banchan, if I'm not mistaken, that's Banchan Marvin from the Meghalaya Roundtable. Banchan asked a question. I think Tingme you already answered it. But you haven't, you can go ahead and answer it. But we also have a question from Hera Saud, who's, if I'm not mistaken, again has asked questions in previous roundtables as well. So maybe we can take Hera's question as the starting point, really, and get a quick word from every single one of you. And Hera asked a question. I would request from the panel to suggest literature to understand conflicts, socio-cultural traditions, lived experiences on Manipur, and to understand more on disability. So if there is anything that you would like to recommend, maybe we can do a quick round of where we can get better understanding. It could be a movie, it could be a YouTube video, it could be like an academic paper, it could be an article, it could be anything. So shall we do that as a quick round? Where can we learn more, and what source can we get it from? And let's do it quickly this time, starting with Pausegin and Sylvia and John.
Hello. Yeah, there are no much academic papers on disabilities or any literature to go through. But whatever documentation each organization is making, like in terms of a write-up or in terms of articles or in terms of a video or in terms of some documentary. So other than that, there's no much on disability studies still yet. And that is the area where we find it very necessary to do right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that. I mean, if there are even songs, any kind of cultural production would be great as a kind of recommendation. Sylvia and then John.
Right. I think this may sound like some kind of promotion, but believe me, it's not. I'm going to recommend some YouTube channels as well as some Instagram art accounts, which I have been, these are the people that I've been working with, the producers and the digital creators that I was talking about earlier. So you can definitely check them out, and they make content on these said platforms. And I'm sure through their content, you'll be able to learn a lot more about the community that I represent and the rich folklore and the cultural heritage of my people. So I'll just post them in the chat box, and everybody is free to sort of click and check them out. Yeah.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much. John?
Yeah, I will say that there are couples of work, and some of the things which I will say that this by some of my professors, that Professor Gamumai Kamai, if you want to understand the histories of Manipur and his work, like we have this one, the 1 minute, just give me a second. By Professor Gamumai, we talk about this one, the social change and about the society of Manipur. I will give in detail what are the name of the books and which publisher. So this will be better. And there are others works of my other seniors also. The works of, I will just mention the names of Riley Rocky, who is now the faculty in IT Bombay, and there are many others which we can, but it'll be much better if I'll be able to share through the link or something like that. That will make sense rather than mentioning them, all of them. Here it may not be possible to do that. Kamei, Samson, some of them wish I have, and Richard Kamei, some I'm not trying to, but whom I have known and their works, right? So this is the people out there who have done good work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think Richard Kamei, you mentioned, I think, is someone I know as well. So that's a nice coincidence. Yeah. So let's, Kumam and Deborah, give us some, as I say, links for more gyan.
Yeah, so I think I slightly I mean I think there is some amount of work. I think I mean the circles are different. I mean there's publications and works on social developmental issues. There's on literature, art. I mean, what are you exactly looking for? So from magazine to news to, let's say, a journal, there's quite quite a bit. And I quoted Imphal Review for Arts and Politics precisely because, not just because it carries out, issues and editorials and, features, but also it tends to write slightly, let's say, objectively. My concern is that there are writings from here and there are publications here and there, but I'm also concerned about the politics of that writing, the politics of publication. There's ample of publication in Zuban, for example, by Zuban. There's few publications here and there from anything from Tiger to Penguin. There's quite a bit, and there's a bunch of journals. I think you would go on to, if you're looking for academic works, go onto an academic platform. You will find. If you're looking for publications in general, I mean, a Google search will help in general. But if you're looking for print work, I think you can go to the state archives. I think state or community archives. I think that's what I think. And for younger generation works, there's a lot on the digital media, like Sylvia said. There's a lot on the blog. So I think a lot about just smart searching. Thanks.
That is great. Let's bring in the others as well, Deborah, and then push Azad and then Tingminam.
Yes, so I would suggest two books, which I will update in the chat section also. So my focus, my research is mainly on the Mars and also touching upon the Cookie Society as well. So I would suggest In Search of Identity, Mars of Northeast India by Laldena, he's a historian, and Cookie Society by T.S. Kante. So I will just give the name of these books in the chat section. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Azad, and then Tingminam.
For me, in order to understand more about the panels, relationship between panels and other communities, I would like to, for beginners who are from outside Manipur, to understand much about the ethnic communities in Manipur, I would suggest you not from in the very core academic sense, but if you look at epow.net, which is an official website of Manipur, you would get a lot of links, articles written by many people who are from different backgrounds. That would be very helpful. And particularly for the Muslims, Pangals in Manipur, if you look at the historical sources, which are the chronicles and the Puyas, say Karol Kumpava is one chronicle, which is the most important one, where it has been mentioned about Pangals. The rest are like the Pangal Porapa and Nong Samay Puya. These are four Puyas written about Pangals. And the rest in contemporary period, there are a lot many works that I cannot write down the whole thing, but then I'll mention a few in the chat box. One of the main important book is by the Muslims of Manipur by the Professor Salam Mehri. That can help a lot to understand what Pangals.
That is good. Good to know. Some more questions are coming in. Netanya asks, with regard to invisible disabilities that Mr. Tonsing mentioned, I'm quite curious regarding the increasing self-awareness of autism and neurodivergence in young adults, particularly ADHD. If there are any such surveys, research, or initiative taken up on that, also whether have you witnessed this rise being observed in Manipur among young adults and children? So that's the question for you to answer, Pozigan.
Yes, with increasing awareness on this intellectual disability as well as learning disability and as the autism spectrum disorder. Even in our center, we are a small center with a population, very big population. The average new case we have in a week is 1.47%. So it's alarming. And as Natina inquired, there's no proper survey about this, and we're also very curious about this rising. And we guess assumptions, but those are not on research based. So this is a very critical area where we need to where someone has to come in and do a research. And we are also looking for partnership who would like to do a research where they can base on us.
Okay. Any other questions? I'm just looking through the chat because there's quite a lot of material in this, very rich resources for people to copy, and I hope you're copying. We'll also copy everything so that we can keep it as a resource. So I'm just going through these questions. Sabina asks, would any of you like to speak more about historical cross-border cultural and trade ties that influence everyday life in the state? Anyone wants to talk about that? Anyone, you can just unmute and start speaking. Anyone at all? I mean, the field is open, so to speak. We have another 5 minutes before we formally, we shut down. Informally, we'll take a little while to say goodbyes, just like any good Indian, festival or function. We'll take some time saying our goodbyes. But yeah, any questions? I mean, I'm sort of maybe I can ask on behalf of everyone, each of you, to say one thing about the ongoing conflict and what it is that you wish people knew better. Just one line, maybe. Shall we do that? Let's start in reverse order, and let's start with Team Minao and then go to Azad and then Deborah. One line, one wish.
One line, one wish with regard to
Anything. I mean, you can interpret that.
As I mentioned in my last point with regard to misconceptions mainlands have about Manipur, there are as many relations and interconnections within with ethnic communities in Manipur. So with the conflict or with whether it be with the ongoing conflict or previous conflicts or conflicts that have been happening in Manipur, it has been difficult for researchers to objectively or to conduct their research as well, because knowledge can be gate kept sometimes with regard to communities. So I wish researchers could freely conduct research in the future as fast as possible to bring forward discourses and knowledge making more objectively. Yes, that's my wish as a researcher. Yes.
Thank you. Azad?
Yeah, as far as current situation in Manipur is concerned, I would like to say that Manipur has had many conflicts in the past many years and decades. And what I have learned from my research in violence is a lot of these incidents of violence have always been dealt with symptomatically. And peacemaking process in Manipur has always been. So for the current situation, I would like to, I would wish that the peacemaking process in Manipur is more intensified, process better, and peace prevail in Manipur as soon as possible. That's all.
Right. Okay. Deborah?
Yes, I would say that as we also know from from the session today, that it's a very diverse state, and each of us have our own socio-historical background, and, so I would say that like our students also would come and ask. So it's better to, if we try to understand the present situation, like the present conflict that is happening in Manipur, better to look and go and analyze uh, each of the reality from different communities' viewpoint, right? Because whatever we see in the news, which are, or these are all not, it has, the thing that we see in the news are all a production of some kind of vested interest already. So that's why, as a researcher and as also a student who wants to be in academia, they should go and try to understand things from every community's point of view, and through that I think we can add very effectively to the body of knowledge that is very much needed at hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Kumam and then John.
Unfortunately, Manipur's armed conflict answer lies in New Delhi, so I think New Delhi must speak more honestly now.
Short and crisp, that was. Who's next? John.
Yeah, it is an unfortunate that that is happening, and then this pained me, and I think the others also feel the same. That we will love that to overcome this as soon as possible. And I believe that we all love, I mean, like Manipur have seen from the historical point of view, a lot of challenges and difficulties. Despite that, they have come out. And as one of the panelists has said that, they may be the culprit or the others. There may be people behind there which we don't know, or we cannot blame or the others or community here and there, and we need to look from the holistic perspective so that we overcome. At the same time, I used to tell the others people who have gone to the state and said that they have been visualized Manipur even before this incident or the problems, that Manipur or the North is something violent, whether we are cannibalists or something like that. But when they went, one of the resource person who came from Kolkata said, it is such a wonderful place. It's such a wonderful place that we have been said that not to go, not to organize program, but every years we are going, and we love to go there and then enjoy the diversity. And I used to say now and then that there unity in diversity, and there are diversity in the unity. So we need to understand the complexities and then celebrate. That's what I would say, that we love that. I wish that these problems are solved as soon as possible, and the center took this interest more and resolve it as soon as possible. That is my prayer and wish. I will say that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So let's go to Sylvia and then end with pause again.
Right. So if we were to talk about the historical cross-border cultural and trade ties and how that influences everyday life in the state, the first thing that comes to my mind is Moray Town, which at one point used to be one of the most thriving economic centers and also a very strategically important point for the Indian state, and not just for Manipur. And ever since May of 2023, as we all know, this has had major ramifications in terms of the economy and how livelihoods have been hit in a very drastic way. And I think about what the larger implications are in terms of Indian government's Act East policy and major investments that were once promised and which have been withdrawn, and how those things are going to play out in the near future and what that may mean for the people of the state. So I think that that's sort of a commentary and a question at the same time. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I have two wishes and three. The first is as Nathania mentioned also about a survey on autism or this neuro problem, neurodivergence. And the second one is replicating our good practices, because in a small town, we cannot have a specific disability schools, so across disability school. And number three, there should be a peace in Manipur. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Just checking to see if there are any other questions, and then we can formally close this discussion. But the way I look at it is that we've inserted ourselves. That is, when I say we, I mean Boom we've inserted ourselves into a conversation that has been going on for a long time in Manipur, in an effort to understand it from the perspective of mainlanders. And it's been an immense evening and afternoon, really, where we've had such a diverse set of people with deep scholarship and leadership in their areas come and speak. So we thank you all very much. We also thank you, the guests, for joining in and listening to our esteemed panel. And of course, thanks to Shulu and Sabina and Divya and Tita. Thank you so much.
Okay,
what
hi.
we'll do is we can